One of the most underrated playoff performances ever was Giannis Antetokounmpo in 2021 against the Suns in the NBA Finals. And with that being said, in today's video, we are going to be making a Finals MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo build on NBA 2K25. I'm going to be showing you guys multiple versions on how to make this build. One that's got really high driving dunk, another one that's a little bit more well-rounded. With all that being said, man, let's get started with today's video. Let's go. Now, starting things off with version 1 of the build, we actually ended up making this at the small forward position because I'm usually going to be using this in rec where I want to play small forward and power forward. I usually don't want to play center on this build. Height's going to be 6'10", weight 223 pounds with a 7'5" wingspan. Now, starting things off in the finishing here, we're going to have an 80 driving layup. That's for the Giannis Antetokounmpo layup style, and a 91 driving dunk. Now, we went with 91 driving dunk specifically because we want to put cap breakers on this to get it to a 96. 96 is where you get the elite contact dunks off to, as well as posterizer on Hall of Fame. So with this build, again, this is with cap breakers in mind, which is why we went with an A91 driving dunk, which does seem kind of weird if you didn't really understand why I made it that way. But yeah, so we did that for the cap breakers. Standing dunk's going to be an 81. That's going to get you the pro big man standing contact dunks as well as silver rise up. All right, so now let's actually get to some of these finishing highlights. And man, this build in transition is insane. Having the 96 driving dunk, which is what I did have on this build, I made my version with 96 off the rip. Obviously, I took sacrifices by doing that. I had less defense on this build, and I don't recommend that you make it this way off the rip. I was just kind of impatient. I'm already close to hitting starter 3 as is. So if I were to remake this build, which I probably will at some point, I'm definitely going to do it with cap breakers in mind, even though that's not what I did originally. As you guys are going to see, when driving to the rim on this build, you are going to be unstoppable, especially once you guys get used to using the dunk meter. And the way that I like to explain the dunk meter, or just offense in general in this game, is the game is heavily like just basically rock, paper, scissors, if that makes any sense. If you're going up against somebody who doesn't really have good defensive or interior defensive or block ratings, you're gonna pretty much just be able to meter dunk whatever and more than likely make it. And again, as you can see, we're max plus one posterizer to legend. So if you see legend posterizer in the top right hand of the screen when I'm getting these crazy contact dunks, it's because it's a 6'10" with +1 posterizer up to legend. But again, the game is basically just rock, paper, scissors when it comes to defense. You either have the matchup or you don't have the matchup. When you have the defensive matchup where you could just score on them at will, they don't have high interior, they don't have high block, you're going to be able to score easily in the paint, which is kind of why I made this build at small forward, because I feel like it's a lot easier to dunk on small forwards and power forwards and rec than it is on centers. So yeah, that's just kind of how I feel like the defense works in this game, and it applies to other things too. It applies to shooting, it applies to a lot of things. So for shooting, for example, when somebody tries to jump at you, contest at you, if they don't have the good ratings to get good contests, it's going to be open most of the time. So I feel like that's just how this game is designed, and as you can see, we are getting some crazy meter dunks. And obviously, when I'm using this Giannis build, I am using all of the Giannis Antetokounmpo sigs. So I'm using his dribble style, I'm using all of his sigs. I actually used his jump shot too, which for the shooting section you will see that. And then towards the back half of it, I was also using Jonathan Isaac base, because as you can imagine, Giannis's jump shot is not that great. But on this build with the Giannis layup style, you can make contested layups without any issue. You can really just dominate in the paint on this build. I've been playing in random rec with like an inside center and a 4 that can't shoot, but if I could get that meter dunk off, man, I could get down there and I can finish with authority, because the meter dunks with the 96 dunk, legend poster, it's just so freaking good. And another thing too, fellas, the strong handle. The strong handle really helps. If people are playing you really high, they're bodying you up on the perimeter, you can straight up just run right through them and get a good meter dunk animation. All right, so now let's move on to the shooting, where we're going to actually do something differently. Okay, 78 mid-range shot for set shot specialist on silver with a 65 three-pointer. Now listen, big huge disclaimer, because a lot of people already consider shooting pretty hard in this game as is, but I really wanted to challenge myself. I went with a 65 three-pointer. You do not have to do this. You do not have to make this build in this way that I made it. You can max out your three-pointer if you want, but I figured since I'm making the Giannis build, I might as well throw on that little extra challenge of putting on a low three-pointer on this build. And I'm not gonna lie, it was not as hard as I thought it was to shoot, especially like open shots like with this build. So let's just get to the shooting highlights. All right, man, so with these shooting highlights, let's get the biggest thing out of the way. I highly recommend that when you're shooting with this build, or any build that has a relatively low three-pointer, you are definitely going to want to use the right stick rhythm shooting. I understand you have to time 2 separate things in order to make the rhythm shooting work, but I promise you, once you put some time in with it, it is going to be easier to shoot with the right stick than the traditional X button, especially on spot up builds. And you're seeing, again, once again, I am shooting pretty consistently consistently on this build using Giannis's jump shot while, again, using right stick rhythm shooting. So I'm not saying everybody's going to be able to do this. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm playing on a really good controller with a really good monitor, and I'm playing on relatively good internet, and I play the game a lot. So I understand the timing pretty well, even though we're early on into the year. So I'm not saying that you're going to be able to shoot like this, but if you put the time in, you'll be able to make your open catch and shoot shots and your wide open threes. And another thing that'll definitely help is that when you get that two-way tenacity, that is when you should look for your shot, because two-way tenacity increases all of your attributes by 15. So when you get two-way tenacity, like this clip right here, you actually have an 83 pointer when I'm shooting this. So he's leaving me wide open holding the B button, but you think I'm care? I'm sparking the top of the key, fella. All right, so now let's move on to the playmaking capabilities of this build. 65 pass accuracy for break starter on silver. I know this is low pass accuracy. I know it's low for a Giannis build. This isn't a competitive build. This is a fun park rec build. And I think 65 pass accuracy is going to be okay on this type of build. Not only that, but I had to finesse quite a bit to make this build have the high finishing and all that. So only a 65 pass accuracy is going to get you bronze break starter, but bronze break starter is really not that bad, fellas. I promise you. 77 ball handle for the strong handle on Hall of Fame. And since strong handle is tier 1 on these 610s, you can actually put strong handle to legend while also having posterizer on legend, which I think is a really cool combination. 68 speed with ball is going to get you lightning launch on bronze, which is pretty nice to have. And when it comes to dribble styles, although I did use Giannis in all of these clips, I highly recommend that you use Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson dribble style is really great for bigs and even tall guards. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the playmaking. Alrighty, so now for the defense, we're going to have a 74 interior defense for post move lockdown on bronze, an 82 perimeter defense for challenger on silver, which is actually pretty nice on these taller bigs, a 60 steal for bronze interceptor, an 84 block for paint patroller on silver. Now, if you want to try and get higher block, you can, because I understand 2021 Giannis in the finals, man, he had a crazy amount of blocks per game, and I'm pretty sure in his closeout game, he had 5 blocks in that closeout game, along with the 50 points and like 15 rebounds. So he was absolutely insane in that finals series. Now, offensive rebound is going to be a 60, defensive rebound is going to be an 85. I understand defensively, this build doesn't have a whole lot, but you got to understand this builder is still relatively limited, even though cap breakers can make things a lot more plausible. But yeah, again, 610s are kind of hard when it comes to getting like a crazy amount of attributes for these type of builds, which is why I'm going to show you guys a 6'11" in a little bit. But I also really wanted to make a build with 96 driving dunk, and this gave me the excuse to do it. So yeah, 96 driving dunk is a whole lot of fun. But yeah, so now this build is pretty much finalized. Now you can see the physical: 78 speed, 73 agility. I like having agility maxed out on pretty much all of my builds. 84 strength for that strong handle on Hall of Fame, as well as box out beast on gold, and then an 85 vertical. Now you're probably wondering why the vertical is an 85 instead of an 80, but it's very simple. When you eventually do get your cap breakers and put the dunk to 96, you need a 96 dunk and an 85 vertical to get posterizer on Hall of Fame. But don't think that we don't have the 85 vertical for no reason. It is for when we eventually get cap breakers to get the 96 dunk for the Hall of Fame posterizer, and obviously the vertical will make a whole lot more sense then. Now this build is pretty cool for the most part. Definitely not the most perfect Giannis build, but it's really freaking hard to make a perfect Giannis build. But now let's take a look at this 6'11" build right here. Now obviously this 6'11" version of the Giannis build is very similar to the 6'10" in a lot of ways. We're only going to have an 89 driving dunk off the rip on this build, but again, that is with cap breakers in mind. You can get the 93 dunk for gold posterizer in the future with this build, but we're setting that up for the cap breakers. Again, 80 driving layup, 81 standing. Shooting's the exact same. Playmaking is pretty much the same, only 60 speed with ball for the Zion Williamson dribble style. 70 ball handle gets you the pro dribble sigs, which are actually very good in this year's game. And then defense wise, we're gonna have more interior, a little bit less prim, obviously, because we're taller, same amount of steal, same amount of block, way more rebounding on this build, which makes this build a little bit more well-rounded, and I think this is going to be a better Giannis Antetokounmpo build. That's gonna be pretty much it for today's video, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this Giannis build. I know you guys have been asking for this a whole lot, and I actually didn't really want to make this build at first, but after making it and playing on it, I actually have had a whole lot of fun on this build. It's made NBA 2K25 pretty fun for me as of late. So when it comes to builds coming out in the future, we actually have a Paolo Banchero build coming out pretty soon, which is like a 6'10" point forward type of build. Might not be the first build that I drop after this, but it's a very, very fun build to play on. But you guys will see that soon. But I'm out, man. Peace.